Terrence, what have you got to contribute to this, this dismal picture where we just appear to be becalmed and stagnant and depressed?
Yes. Thank you for having me. I think in my mind, and having a few conversations with colleagues in industry, it's twofold. We've got to look to government at some point, going directly from where Nikki took us, from the policy stability and confidence, because the long-term picture is very unclear. It's very murky water at the moment. And as you rightly mentioned earlier, there's billions in private equity and private industry, but nobody wants to use those because you're not sure where it's going to go, because there's way too much uncertainty. That's across the board, from the mining sectors to development to property to everything else, because then there's also talk of expropriation and other models. But there's also the portion where business has to come to the party, because it's not a one-sided structure. Government can put policy in place, but business itself needs to stimulate business. And with good exposure and experience in state-owned entities, etc., to cover the business side very briefly, business has to posture itself to bring in foreign direct investment, to relax some of their policies. Although highly regulated, I read yesterday Standard Bank has created what they call a supportive trust. So they provide a part of the collateral for those who don't have all the collateral that's required for entrepreneurs and businesses to develop. And that to me is a thinking in the right direction. If you look at global markets, VCs are huge, private equity is huge. In South Africa it exists, but not to the level it needs to be. Because if we start to contrast on some of the thinking that the American markets and the rest of the developing world is growing, it's because they're willing to take risk and there is that appetite. There's not only looking to policy and saying, well, government's not doing enough. One could, and I hate to use an example, but India itself has policy changes and dynamics. But their economy is booming on the entrepreneurship side and business development, because they're posturing each other to say, where can we meet each other? My honest thinking is, from the government side, there is a lot of uncertainty. And there needs to be some guidance. Things are moving in the right direction, as we mentioned, the new CEO of the SAA being appointed, but there needs to be a hell of a lot more done in the SOEs. Because let's be honest, the reality of a lot of these allegations of corruption, etc., is bleeding from the SOEs. There needs to be tighter fiscal control and policy governance and implementation. Treasury's doing what it can. If you look at the policies, Treasury has put out fantastic policies. The difficulties are those entities actually implementing that. Because there is talk in industry of the entities specializing in ways to circumvent those policies. And I'm not pointing fingers, but there needs to be more from government side. And I believe that these SOEs need to line up.
What about the South African Reserve Bank? It seems like it's doing their bit. They gave us a 25 basis points cut, and the governor, Leslie Kganyago, continuing to fight for the bank's independence.
I fully agree with his perspective and his angle. My concern is there may have been an agenda or some other reasons behind the push to try and change those policies. I strongly believe the Reserve Bank is in the right position and has strong control, and therefore when we had the previous waves of recession, we were in a safer position, not in the best position, but because we have strong fiscal control.
I just want to come back finally to your comment about business coming to the party. I recall in the early 2000s, there was the same talk about an investment strike by the private sector. And then spending started taking off. But the policy environment was very different then. There was confidence in stability.
Indeed. I think whilst we look in policy confidence, there's a lot at government's door at the moment to say, show us where we're going. And I fully agree with that. But there's also the perspective of business saying business has to go on. And if you want to evolve and develop and compete on a global scale to the levels we need to start taking some risk, even if it means we need to support that risk internally.
Thanks to Dr. Terrence Kommal, he's CEO of the Medical Expert Consulting Group.